Chapter 1. The Announcement. The room smelled like cedar and old leather. The family sat stiffly around the kitchen table. The kind of table that had seen generations of silent dinners and hard decisions. Samuel Whitmore Sr. rested his hands on the worn surface, palms flat, eyes steady. The way he always looked when something was about to change. From this day forward, he said, her name is Samuel Jr. There was no discussion, no question. Just that statement. Hanging in the air like the dust motes drifting through the morning sun that filtered in through the lace curtains. Cynthia Whitmore flinched only slightly, her fingers tightening on the handle of her coffee mug. She didn't look at her daughter, her child, sitting across from her in a pale blue dress with lace trim that she had sewn herself last spring. The child, just 6 years old, blinked, confused. Her name was Skylar. She liked butterflies, drawing with chalk, and the way her teacher called her Miss Whitmore when she raised her hand in class. Skylar looked at her mother, then at her father. She opened her mouth to ask why, but Samuel Sr. stood up before she could speak. It's not personal, he said, as if speaking to the air. The name's got weight. It has purpose. Skylar sounds too light, too fleeting. We need strength. And she has to carry that now. Skylar, now Samuel Jr., felt something cold settle inside her. She didn't know what was happening, only that her name, the one her grandmother had whispered into her ear the night she was born, had just been taken from her. She was no longer Skylar. That name was gone, like a toy accidentally left behind in the rain and forgotten. The story behind the decision came later. A local elder from town, some said he was part fortune teller, part crook, had told Samuel Sr. that the farm was cursed, that the Whitmore name would disappear within a generation unless a son took over. You need symmetry, the man had said. You name the farm after yourself. If your son bears your name, the land will thrive. It's balance. It's destiny. But Samuel didn't have a son. He had a daughter. A soft-spoken, bright-eyed girl who loved music and cloud watching, not cattle and dirt and diesel engines. But to him, that detail seemed adjustable. The next day, Skylar's clothes were packed away in boxes. Out came the flannel shirts, the boys' jeans, and the work boots 2 sizes too big. She was taken to the local barber shop, where old men gathered like rusted lawn chairs, and had her shoulder-length curls chopped off in silence. Clean cut, the barber muttered, unsure of what he was doing. Back home, the mailbox was repainted, S. Whitmore Jr. At school, her name was changed in the attendance register. We've had to make some changes at home, her mother explained vaguely to the teacher. She'll go by Samuel now. That week, Skylar stopped coloring in class. She didn't raise her hand. She didn't laugh during recess. When other kids asked her why she suddenly had a boy's name, she said, "Because my parents need me to be someone else." It didn't take long for Skylar to realize that the name wasn't just a name. It came with expectations. At home, she was told to lift heavier things, to fix fences, to learn how to handle livestock. Boys don't cry, her father warned one day after she skinned her knee trying to climb into the tractor. Especially not boys who carry the Whitmore name. Her mother stopped brushing her hair at night. No more bedtime stories. No more lullabies. You're strong now, her mother whispered once. Almost apologetically, as if trying to convince herself that this was the right thing. Skylar tried, she really did. She carried bales of hay until her shoulders ached. She learned to drive the pickup before she turned 10. She listened to her father's lectures on profit margins and grain costs and cattle health. And slowly, she disappeared. The girl who once danced in puddles and painted flowers on the barn walls was buried beneath the soil of expectation. But every night, when the house was quiet, she would open a sketchbook hidden under the loose floorboard in her room. By the light of a small flashlight, she would draw. She drew herself, not as she looked in the mirror, but as she felt inside. Her long hair tied with ribbons, a bright smile on her face, butterflies swirling around her shoulders like they did in the backyard when she was little. Sometimes, she drew the name Skylar in big looping letters, just to remember what it felt like. Years passed like that. Skylar lived as Samuel. Her real name became a whisper in her own mind. Something sacred and fragile she dared not say aloud. Her parents never once mentioned the change again. It became fact, like the weather or the way the creek always flooded in April. The name Skylar was erased from family photos, from birthday cards, from memories. But it remained quietly in the girl's heart. Until one day, many years later, that heart would have the strength to speak again. And the name would rise. Chapter 2: Becoming a Son. Skylar wasn't allowed to cry the day she fell from the barn roof. She'd been helping her father patch a loose shingle, the kind of job she was told she needed to learn if she was going to be the one to take over the property someday. Her hands were too small to grip the hammer properly, but she tried anyway. She always tried. Her boot slipped. Her elbow scraped wood. Her side hit the ladder. And she fell. The breath was knocked clean out of her, her ribs screaming in protest as she crumpled onto the dry grass below. For a few seconds, all she could hear was the wind in the cornfield. She blinked at the sky dazed. Then her father appeared over her. He didn't ask if she was okay. "Get up," he said, voice even. "You're not hurt that bad." Her lip quivered. Her side throbbed. But she got up. Because Samuel Jr. was supposed to be tough. He wasn't supposed to cry or flinch. He wasn't supposed to have weaknesses, especially not girlish ones. That fall, Skylar was entered into the local county fair's junior livestock show, not because she asked, but because her father signed her up without telling her. "It's time people see what kind of heir the Whitmores are raising," he said proudly, his big hand resting on her small shoulder like a brand. She was given a young calf to raise, one that hadn't taken well to human interaction. The animal kicked, bit, refused to be led. Skylar, who had once been scared to touch worms in the garden, now had to learn how to control something twice her size. "I'm not good at this," she told her father one evening, holding her bruised arm where the calf had rammed her. He looked at her like she'd spoken blasphemy. "You're a Whitmore," he said. "And a man. You'll become good at it." "But I'm not," as she started, but swallowed the rest. Her voice shrank under the weight of expectation. School became no better. The other kids never forgot that Skylar had once worn dresses and bows, that she used to sing in the Christmas play with the other girls. But now she showed up to school in loose jeans, short hair, and a name that didn't quite fit. Some were cruel. They called her Sammy Girl or Farm Freak. Others avoided her altogether. Even teachers didn't know what to make of her. One substitute, reading the roll call for the first time, looked at her and asked, "Are you sure you're Samuel?" She just nodded, staring at her notebook filled with invisible drawings. Her sketchbook no longer stayed under the floorboard. It traveled with her, inside her backpack, carefully tucked between textbooks and worksheets. She doodled on the margins of everything, barns turning into castles, cattle sprouting wings. A girl with long hair and paint-stained fingers climbing out of her own name. She called those drawings little escapes. When she turned 10, her grandfather passed away. The funeral was a quiet affair, just family and a few neighbors, all gathered at the same church where generations of Whitmores had been baptized and buried. Skylar sat stiff in her too-tight black suit. Her mother dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Her father remained still as stone. After the service, her father knelt beside his father's casket, placed a weathered photograph of himself as a boy beside it, and whispered, "Don't worry. Samuel Jr. will take it from here." Skylar watched, her stomach churning. It was like she didn't exist, only the version of her that he had decided should. Later that night, she asked her mother quietly, "Did you ever want a daughter?" Her mother hesitated before answering. "I wanted a child. And we got you. But your father, he needed someone to carry the name. Someone strong." Skylar looked away. "But I am strong," she whispered. "I know," her mother said. "But not the kind of strong he understands." The truth was, Skylar had begun to forget how her own voice sounded when she spoke freely. Most of the time, she said what she was supposed to, learned what she was told to learn, smiled when she felt like screaming. One evening, while sorting through old photo albums in the attic, she found a single picture from her 4th birthday. She was wearing a yellow sundress. Her hair was in curls, face lit up with joy as she held a homemade butterfly cake. On the back, written in her mother's careful cursive, were the words, "Skylar and our sunshine." She stared at it for a long time. The next day, she hid that photo inside her sketchbook. She wasn't sure why. Maybe to prove to herself that she had existed. That she hadn't imagined it. That there had been a time, however short, when she was allowed to be exactly who she was. In the years that followed, the name Skylar faded from every part of her public life. But in the drawings, always in the drawings, she reclaimed it. She didn't sign them with Samuel. She signed them in tiny cursive. At the bottom of each page, S and W. It wasn't rebellion. It was survival. Chapter 3, Where the Girls Aren't. There was an unspoken line that divided the kids at school, and Skylar knew exactly which side she was expected to stand on. The girls played jump rope and shared lip gloss in the shade of the maple trees. They whispered about TV shows, braided each other's hair, and wrote notes folded like origami. Their world was warm, buzzing with secrets and sparkles. Skylar used to belong there. In first grade, she had a best friend named Lila, someone who invited her over for sleepovers and called her drawings magic. But after the name change, Lila's mom stopped calling. The invitations dried up. Lila, confused and cautious, began to drift. By fourth grade, Skylar stood alone during recess, her name now a label that clashed with the person she used to be. "Why don't you play with them anymore?" A teacher once asked her kindly. "Because I'm not supposed to," she answered. Instead, she sat on the concrete steps near the edge of the field, watching the boys roughhouse with footballs, shout at each other over video games, and jab elbows into ribs without apology. She was expected to join them, expected to learn their rhythm, their language. But she never quite did. There were moments, brief, almost invisible, when Skylar tried to blend in. She mimicked the way the boys talked, louder, shorter sentences, clipped like engine sounds. She wore her cap backward, laughed when they teased her, threw a football so hard it hurt her fingers, just so she wouldn't be left out. Once, during a class group project, one boy nudged her and said, "You're lucky, Sam. You're kinda like one of us, but you draw cool stuff too. Like, better than girls." She smiled faintly and nodded. But inside, her stomach curled. Because what did that even mean? That girls couldn't be good at art? That being one of the boys was praise? That she had to choose between fitting in and being herself? At home, her father took her attempts as proof he'd been right all along. "You're doing great, son," he'd say. "Told you the name suits you." Skylar wanted to scream, "It doesn't." It never did. But instead, she just said, "Thanks." The town itself didn't help much. Ellensburg was small, the kind of place where people remembered your name before your face. Everyone knew the Whitmores. Everyone knew Samuel Sr., and now, they all knew his son. At church, the elders clapped her back and said, "Good job, young man. You'll run that ranch better than your old man someday." At the feed store, the owner tossed her an extra bag of chicken grain and said, "For the hard-working boy keeping tradition alive." She stopped correcting them. It didn't matter. No one wanted the truth. They wanted a story. A clean one. A boy who bore his father's name. Who would inherit the land, the sweat, the legacy. Not a girl who loved colors and stories and skies that stretched far beyond the valley. The only place Skylar felt like herself was the old barn. It was falling apart at the edges, too dangerous for livestock, so her father avoided it. But for Skylar, it became a secret sanctuary. She cleared a small space in the back corner, sweeping away hay and dust until she had a flat spot beneath a beam where sunlight poured through. There, she taped her drawings on the wall, page by page. She filled that space with fragments of her real self, watercolors of girls dancing in forests, comic panels of brave, misunderstood heroines. Soft pastels of a little girl sitting under stars that spelled out her name, Skylar. It was a museum of what could have been. Sometimes she would sit for hours. The scent of old wood and grass in the air, listening to the distant sounds of tractors and cowbells, and imagine another version of her life. One where she had kept her name. where she wore whatever she liked, where she didn't have to pretend to be what the town needed her to be, where she belonged. But those moments never lasted. One day, her father found a torn corner of one of her drawings in the laundry, tucked inside her pocket. He called her out to the front porch after dinner, held up the paper like it was evidence in a trial. "What's this?" he asked. She swallowed. "A drawing. Of a girl." "Yes." "Why?" Skylar looked down at her shoes. Her scuffed boots. Her scraped knees. Her shaking hands. "Because I miss her," she said softly. Her father stared at her for a long moment, then crumpled the paper and tossed it behind him into the dusk. "You've got too much work to do to waste time missing what never was." That night, she didn't sleep. She walked barefoot to the old barn, sat beneath the beam of moonlight, and cried for the first time in months. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears for the name she used to carry. For the girl who was never allowed to stay. And for the growing realization that maybe, just maybe, she would have to leave Chapter 4, the sketchbook under the bed. The sketchbook had soft corners and a worn leather cover that had once been tea, but was now the color of old soil. Skylar kept it under her bed, tucked between a loose floorboard and the cold earth below. She never let it leave the room, not anymore. After her father had crumpled one of her drawings like it was trash, she knew that even paper could become dangerous. The book was her only truth. Each page was a fragment of a world where she didn't have to pretend. Some pages were chaotic, streaks of charcoal, hurried lines, frustration turned into faces. Others were delicate, inked illustrations of girls with wide, wondering eyes, standing on cliff edges with stars tangled in their hair. The girl in her drawings was always the same. Long hair, soft clothes, a quiet but unshakable fire. Skylar never labeled her, but she knew who that girl was. It was her. One evening, when the farm had gone quiet and the walls breathed with creaks of settling wood, Skylar pulled out the sketchbook and flipped to the middle. She began to draw. The image came quickly, more memory than imagination. A younger version of herself, maybe 5 or 6, sitting in her grandmother's lap in the swing behind the house. Back when she was still called Skylar. Back when the world was small and kind. Her grandmother had loved that name, always saying, "Skylar and sounds like the sky's own daughter." Skylar had forgotten how that felt. As she sketched the folds of her grandmother's shawl, she heard a knock on her door. A soft one. Unusual in a house where knocking was rarely a courtesy given. She froze, slammed the sketchbook shut, shoved it beneath the bed. "Sam," her mother's voice came through. "You still awake?" "Yes, ma'am." The door creaked open and Cynthia stepped inside holding a pile of laundry. Her eyes scanned the room briefly, stopping for just a second at the gap under the bed. Then she sighed and set the clothes on the dresser. "You've been quiet," she said. Skylar didn't answer. Quiet was safer than speaking. Her mother rubbed her hands together, as if uncertain whether she should stay. "I found a paper in the laundry last week," she said carefully. "A drawing. Of a girl. You want to talk about that?" "No, ma'am." Cynthia nodded. "All right. But I hope you know. I see you." Skylar blinked. "See me? I mean, I know there's more to you than what your daddy wants you to be. I know it's not fair, but sometimes she trailed off. Eyes heavy with a kind of guilt Skylar didn't recognize. Sometimes we make choices for our kids, thinking we're protecting them. And maybe that's not always true. There was silence. Skylar wanted to ask, "Then why didn't you stop him? Why didn't you fight for me?" But the words never came. Her mother reached over and brushed a piece of hair from Skylar's forehead. For just a moment, her touch felt like it used to, gentle, not performative. Not part of the mold they'd built around her. Then she stood. "Good night, Sam," she whispered. Skylar stared at the door long after it closed. The next day, her father announced they'd be entering the county fair again. This time, not just livestock, but a youth business presentation. "You'll explain our rotation system. Show them how the Whitmores run things. Impress the judges," he said proudly. Skylar blinked. "But I don't." "You'll do great. You've got the brains. It's time you stepped up. She wanted to scream that she didn't care about rotation systems or breeding cycles or soil testing. She wanted to yell that she didn't want to impress anyone, not like that. But she nodded. As always. That night, she drew herself in the fairgrounds, standing on a platform, mouth open in silent protest, while everyone clapped around her. But no one saw her. Not really. The ribbon she held in the drawing said Best Illusion. She tucked the sketch between the pages and didn't sleep. 3 weeks later, the fair arrived. Skylar wore a stiff button-up and jeans. She had memorized everything her father asked her to, gave the speech, pointed to charts, repeated numbers she didn't care about. People applauded. Her father beamed. "That's my son," he told the crowd. Skylar smiled. Inside, she disappeared just a little more. When the fair ended, she slipped away from the barn and walked to the edge of the field. The sky was an ocean of deep purple, the sun melting behind the hills. She sat beneath the same maple tree she used to play under when she was little, before she was Samuel Jr. She opened the sketchbook again. This time, she drew herself not as she was, but as she would be. Hair long again. Standing in front of a gallery. Her real name in lights above, Skylar and Whitmore. Artist. And this time, she didn't sign it S and W. She wrote it out full and clear in bold black ink. Skylar. Chapter 5, College Rebellion. The acceptance letter came on a Tuesday. It arrived in a large cream-colored envelope, the kind that didn't bend and carried weight even before it was opened. The return address read, Pacific Northwest College of Art, Portland, Oregon. Skylar found it tucked among a stack of seed catalogs and tractor part invoices on the kitchen table. She held it with shaking hands. She already knew what it was. She'd applied in secret, using her real name, Skylar and Whitmore, and paid the fee with savings from sketch commissions she had quietly done for classmates and a local print shop. Each night after finishing chores, she would sneak into the old barn, open her laptop, and paint late into the dark. Skylar hadn't believed it would actually happen. But now, here it was. Her name, her real name, on an envelope that didn't belong to Samuel Jr., or to her father's legacy, or to this farm. It belonged only to her. She didn't open it right away. She just stood there in the kitchen, listening to the ticking clock, to the distant mooing from the barn, to the low hum of the refrigerator. She traced the curve of her name on the front again and again. And then she slid it into her backpack, under the sketchbook, and walked out the back door. She opened it under the maple tree. The same tree where, years ago, she used to draw butterflies in the dirt with her fingers. Where she had once believed the world could be as soft as her imagination. Congratulations. The letter began. We are pleased to offer you admission into the Bachelor of Fine Arts program, with a focus in illustration. She didn't finish reading the rest before bursting into quiet, uncontrollable tears. Not because of the honor. Not even because of the opportunity. But because for the first time in her life, someone saw her. Not as a boy. Not as a farmhand. Not as the backup plan for a failing legacy. Just as herself. Skylar. Telling her parents wasn't part of the plan, not yet. For a few days, she kept the letter folded in the back of her sketchbook like a sacred secret. But it burned against her ribs every time she walked through the farmhouse. Every time her father handed her a wrench or pointed to a broken fence and barked, "Go fix it, Sam." So finally, one night after dinner, she said it out loud. I got into college. Her father didn't look up from the newspaper. Community or state? Art school. In Portland. That made him look up. Art school. Skylar nodded, keeping her voice steady. It's a full scholarship. I got in with my portfolio. He scoffed. Portfolio? You mean your doodles? They're not doodles. Her voice cracked slightly. There. You're going to abandon the farm to go paint? I'm not abandoning anything. This isn't who I am. I've been trying to tell you. You've been trying to what? His voice was sharp now, slicing the room in two. We gave you everything. This land. This name. You think art is going to feed you? This is real life, not fairy tales. Skylar clenched her fists. That name was never mine to begin with. Silence. The kind that burned in the chest. Her mother sat very still at the table, staring at her cup of tea. Samuel Sr. stood slowly. "No son of mine is running off to become a starving artist," he said. "Good," Skylar whispered. "Because I'm not your son." She left the house at 2 a.m. No slamming doors. No teary goodbyes. Just the gentle creak of the back steps, the zipper of her backpack, and the sound of gravel under her boots. She walked down the long driveway under a moonless sky, her heart pounding with both terror and relief. Noah was waiting for her at the end of the road. Engine running. Her little brother had grown taller in the past year, but his eyes were still kind, still soft. "You sure?" he asked, watching her approach. Skylar nodded. "I have to." He opened the passenger door. "Then get in." She did. As they drove away, the fields stretched endlessly on either side of the road, dark and quiet and vast. Skylar turned in her seat to look one last time at the only home she'd ever known. It didn't look like home anymore. It looked like a prison made of silos and silence. "You'll make it," Noah said after a while. "They won't understand now. But someday." Skylar shook her head gently. "I'm not doing it for them." She touched the sketchbook in her lap. "I'm doing it for her." Chapter 6. The Night of Goodbye. The house was still, the kind of stillness that clung to the walls like dust, too heavy, too quiet, too full of things unsaid. Skylar stood in her old room, its corners shadowed in the low amber light of a desk lamp. The sheets on her bed were tucked military tight, her bookshelf still full of things she'd long outgrown, outdated farming manuals, a rusted globe, a trophy from the 4-H fair she never wanted to win. None of it felt like hers. The only thing she wanted to take with her was the sketchbook, which now lay zipped into her backpack along with the letter and a few pairs of clothes. She hadn't packed much. She didn't need to. She wasn't running away. She was leaving. And there's a difference. Just before she zipped up the bag, she paused. Under her bed, tucked where even she rarely reached anymore, was a wooden box, a gift from her grandmother when she was 6. The year before her name was taken. She hesitated before pulling it out, the wood creaking faintly in her hands. Inside were folded scraps of paper, dried flowers, and an old plastic charm bracelet that used to spell Skylar. One of the letters had faded into a gray smudge, but the shape still remained. She touched it like a fragile relic. She placed the bracelet in her pocket and closed the box, sliding it back into the dark. Let it sleep, she thought. That version of her had never really been allowed to live. But the one walking out tonight, she would. Down the hallway, her parents' room was silent. The door was shut, but she could hear the soft wheeze of her father's snore, the rustle of her mother turning in bed. She considered slipping a note under their door, something simple, something soft. "I'm not angry. I just have to go." Or maybe, "You named me wrong. But I'm naming my life now." But she didn't. Let them feel the quiet in the morning. Let the silence speak what she had shouted in 100 different ways and still hadn't been heard. As she crept down the stairs, Noah sat waiting at the kitchen table with 2 travel mugs, one for her, black coffee with too much sugar, and one for him, straight and bitter, like he always preferred. He slid hers across the table wordlessly. "You okay?" he asked. Skylar gave him a half nod, her throat thick. "You don't have to take me all the way, you know." "I want to," he said. "This is the kind of goodbye that deserves more than a bus ticket." She smiled, grateful. "They'll blame you." He shrugged. "Let them. I'd rather be blamed for helping you be real than praised for helping you stay fake." It was the most honest thing anyone had said to her in years. They walked out to the truck together. The night air was crisp, a September chill that hinted at winter. The stars above were so bright, so close, they looked like you could breathe them in if you stood still long enough. Skylar turned once slowly. The farmhouse glowed faintly behind them, soft light pouring from the window over the sink, left on by habit. The porch swing still creaked with the wind, and the American flag hung limp on its pole. It was the same house she'd grown up in. But it didn't look like home anymore. It looked like a place where someone had tried to erase her. She got into the passenger seat without another word. The drive was quiet at first. The engine hummed over the back roads, the headlights stretching forward like fingers into the unknown. Skylar rested her forehead against the cool window glass, watching fence posts flick by in rhythmic flashes. She didn't cry, not because she wasn't sad, but because sadness felt too small for this moment. This wasn't grief. This wasn't fear. This was transformation. About 20 miles out, Noah finally spoke. "You know," he said, "I remember when you were little, you used to sit in the chicken coop and name all the hens like princesses." Skylar chuckled softly. "You used to laugh at me. I still do. But I also knew back then, before all the Sam Jr. stuff, you were different. You didn't belong in Ellensburg, and definitely not on that farm. You belonged somewhere with light and noise and stories. Somewhere people didn't have to hide." Skylar turned to him. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" He looked over at her. "Because I didn't know how. But I knew I'd follow you if you ever left." She smiled, eyes damp now. "You don't have to. I know. That's the point." They reached the edge of Portland just before sunrise. The sky behind them was still navy blue, but ahead, the horizon had begun to glow soft oranges and lavender smears like watercolor across the sky. Skylar stared at the city lights in the distance. They looked like a new kind of constellation. Man-made stars. Possibilities. Noah pulled into a side lot next to her new housing building. She hadn't even seen it yet, only in photos. But it didn't matter. It had a roof and a door. And it was hers. When the truck stopped, neither of them moved. "You sure you're ready?" Noah asked. Skylar looked down at her hands. Her nails were short and uneven, scarred from years of farm work. Her palms were calloused. Her boots were still muddy. But her chest felt like a sunrise. "Yeah," she said. "I think I've always been ready. I just didn't have permission before." "You don't need it," Noah replied. "Not anymore." She got out of the truck, backpack slung over her shoulder. As she reached the sidewalk, she turned back one last time. Noah rolled down the window. "Don't forget who you are," he said. "I won't," she replied. And this time, she meant it. Chapter 7. Becoming Skylar Again. The apartment wasn't anything special, a converted attic in a crumbling Victorian house in southeast Portland. The walls slanted inward where the ceiling met the roof, the radiator clanked like a cough in winter, and the only window faced a fire escape. But to Skylar, it was a palace. It was quiet in the right ways, no barking orders, no banging boots on wooden floors, no voices calling her a name that didn't belong to her. Just the soft rustle of wind through the trees outside, and the occasional sound of distant traffic that reminded her she was finally somewhere else. She lay on the mattress that first night, no bed frame yet. Just a donated box spring from a campus bulletin board, and stared up at the cracked ceiling, feeling something she hadn't in years. Lightness. Like the name she had been born with. The next morning, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at herself without judgment for the first time in years. Her hair had grown just past her ears, still uneven from years of farm cuts, but softer now. Her eyes, tired but steady, didn't flinch from the reflection. She touched her collarbone, the space where a name necklace might go, and whispered, "Skylar." Just saying it out loud felt like magic. Skylar and Whitmore. She didn't need permission anymore. She enrolled in classes using her legal name. She emailed the admissions office to update her student records, no questions asked. She introduced herself as Skylar on the first day of orientation, and no one blinked. No one tilted their head. No one asked why her voice caught for a moment before saying it. In Portland, people simply accepted things. And that was revolutionary. Art school was a different universe. There were students with blue hair and tattoos of galaxies, others who wore earrings the size of teacups, one girl who carried a sketch pad in one hand and a miniature bonsai tree in the other. The professors called everyone by their preferred name and pronouns like it was breathing, natural, expected, unquestioned. Skylar sat in the back of her first illustration class and waited for someone to challenge her. No one did. Instead, The instructor, a gentle man with silver-rimmed glasses and a paint-splattered denim jacket, looked over her portfolio and said, "You see the world in layers. That's rare. Don't flatten your voice to fit the frame." She blinked. "I thank you," she stammered. No one had ever talked about her art like it mattered. Not even her. She walked home after class that day and passed a storefront with a cracked mirror in the window. On impulse, she stepped in. A vintage shop, full of worn sweaters, frayed books, and things that smelled like stories. She found a navy blue dress, not flashy, not dramatic, just soft and loose and hers. She hadn't worn a dress in over a decade. She tried it on in the corner fitting room, staring at herself in the dusty mirror with uneven lighting. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked like someone she used to draw. Like someone who had always been waiting behind her ribs. Skylar bought the dress and wore it home, clutching the paper bag like it was filled with fragile stars. She began drawing differently. It wasn't that she'd gotten better. It was that she had permission. Her lines had rhythm now. Her colors had confidence. She stopped drawing herself as a faceless girl. She stopped hiding in symbols. She drew Skylar. Real and radiant. In one class, they were assigned to illustrate a self-portrait, not just their features, but their identity. Skylar stayed up all night painting. When she turned it in, the professor held the canvas and stared at it for a long time. "You painted your truth," he said quietly. "That's rare at your age." She didn't know what to say. So she just nodded. The first time she signed a finished piece with her full name, Skylar and Whitmore, her hands trembled. She had practiced that signature for years in secret. Now, it flowed from her fingers like water. Her work was featured in a student showcase that semester. When the pamphlet came out, she saw her name in print, standing proudly beneath her piece. No one called her Samuel. No one called her son. No one looked at her like she was a lie. She walked home with the pamphlet tucked in her coat pocket, her fingers curled around it the whole way. One weekend in October, she got a letter from home. Not a text. Not an email. A real letter. The handwriting on the envelope was shaky, her mother's. Skylar stared at it for an hour before opening it. Inside was a short note on yellow stationery. "Skylar, I saw your name in the art school's online newsletter. I wasn't looking for it. But there it was. You looked like someone I remember. Someone I miss. I don't know how to say I'm sorry in a way that makes up for anything. But I want to say it anyway. I'm sorry. Love. Mom." Skylar read it 3 times. She didn't cry, but something inside her softened. Like a knot loosening. Like an old door finally opening after years of rust. That night, she sat in her window. Sketchbook open on her knees. Outside, the city glowed, streetlights blinking like stars in puddles. She could hear laughter from the sidewalk below, a dog barking in the distance, a violin playing faintly from a nearby apartment. She drew herself again. Not running. Not hiding. Not split between names. Just Skylar. Standing in a room filled with light. Walls covered in paintings. Windows wide open. And across the bottom of the page, she wrote, "Becoming myself was not rebellion. It was resurrection." Chapter 8. A room of her own. The attic apartment was drafty and sloped at strange angles, but over time, Skylar filled it with pieces of herself. She strung fairy lights across the beams, tacked her drawings to the walls, and taped small sticky notes above the mirror that read, "Breathe, be bold, and you are not a ghost." The windowsill held tiny succulents, rescued from a clearance shelf, now basking in filtered sunlight. Each corner of the room became a declaration of selfhood, nothing borrowed, nothing forced. This wasn't just a place to sleep. It was hers. For the first time in her life, Skylar had a room that did not belong to someone else's vision of who she should be. And that changed everything. She began each morning with music. Not the loud kind that shook the walls, but soft, deliberate melodies, indie folk, jazz piano, the hum of instrumental guitar. The kind of music that made her feel like she had time. Like she had permission to take up space, to move slowly, to be present. She would stretch on the worn wooden floor, the sunlight brushing her cheek, the city's heartbeat rising in the background. Then she'd make tea, always in the same chipped mug that read "World's Okayest Artist," a thrift store find she now treasured, and sit by the window, sketchbook open. Each page was a conversation with herself. One morning in late October, as the leaves outside turned shades of ember and gold, Skylar found herself sketching something she hadn't expected. It was the barn back home. Not in anger. Not as a prison. But as a memory. She drew the slant of the roof, the knotty wooden panels, the hayloft with the broken ladder she used to climb when no one was looking. She even added a small figure in the corner herself, maybe 12 years old, sketchbook on her knees. Eyes turned toward a patch of sun. She stared at it for a long time after. Maybe it was time to stop treating the past like a locked box. Maybe it could be something else now, a backdrop, not a cage. That week, Skylar got a part-time job at a local design studio downtown. It was small, just 5 people and an over-caffeinated office dog named Hugo, but the work was steady and the space vibrant. They let her design logos, storyboard campaigns, even create digital art for nonprofit posters. Her coworkers praised her creativity, not just for her technical skills, but for her point of view. "You have an honesty in your lines," her supervisor said one day. "Like you've been carrying a truth no one else saw, and now you're finally ready to share it." Skylar had smiled so hard her face hurt. And then, when no one was looking, she took a photo of her nameplate on her desk. Skylar A. Whitmore, Junior Designer. She sent the photo to Noah. "Made it to the door. Now I'm building the house." He replied in seconds. Skylar's house has windows in every direction. On weekends, she volunteered at a community art center, helping kids with markers and crayons and giant paper taped to walls. One little girl named Emily brought her drawings up every 5 minutes asking, "Is this good?" Skylar always knelt down, smiled, and said the same thing. "If it feels true, it's already good." One day, Emily asked, "Why do you like drawing so much?" Skylar paused before answering. "Because for a long time," she said slowly, "it was the only way I knew how to speak." Emily looked at her and nodded solemnly, then handed her a picture of a bluebird flying over a hill. "This one's for you," she whispered. "Because you draw skies a lot." Skylar folded the paper carefully and tucked it into her bag. She would keep it always. Her apartment began to fill with color. Not just on paper, but in real life. Orange pillows, mint green curtains, thrifted paintings with chipped gold frames. She hung a mirror near the door and placed a small dish beneath it where she left her name necklace each night, Skylar, in cursive silver. She had bought it for herself. A quiet reclamation. At night, she would stand in front of the mirror and touch the name with her fingers, whispering it like a promise. "You are here. You are her. And you don't have to earn your own name anymore." Then, one Friday evening, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it until she saw the area code. Ellensburg. Her thumb hovered for a second before she pressed accept. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end. Then soft, unsure. "Skylar." Her breath caught. "Mom?" "I hope it's okay," her mother said quickly. "Noah gave me your number. I didn't know if I should call." Skylar sat down on the edge of her bed, heart pounding. "It's okay," she said quietly. "I just wanted to say that I've been reading your school's website. I saw the student gallery. And I saw your name there. And your face." Skylar said nothing, letting her speak. "I didn't recognize you right away," her mother continued. "But then I looked closer. And I thought, there she is. That's the girl I used to sing to. That's the child we named once and then lost." A long pause. "I'm sorry for what we did. I thought we were helping you. I thought we were saving something. But I see now, we weren't saving you. We were erasing you." Tears slipped down Skylar's cheek silently. "I'm not asking for anything," her mom said. "I just needed you to hear that." Skylar wiped her face. Then exhaled. "Thank you," she whispered. And meant it. That night, she didn't draw. She just stood at the window, watching the city glow beneath her. She felt weightless. She felt whole. For the first time, Skylar lived not just in her sketchbook or her dreams. She lived in her room. She lived in the city. She lived in her own skin. And no one, not time, not history, not even family, could take that away again. Chapter 9. Voices from the Past. The letter came in a plain white envelope with no return address. Skylar almost didn't open it. She stood at her mailbox holding it for several minutes, thumb tracing the edge, her breath caught between fear and curiosity. It was handwritten, her name in slightly shaky, unfamiliar cursive. Skylar A. Whitmore. No, Samuel Jr. No to our son. Just her name. Her real one. She waited until she was back in her apartment, the door locked behind her, before she slid her finger beneath the seal and carefully unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was her father's. Skylar. I don't know what to say except that I've been wrong for a long time. Your brother showed me some of your work online. That wasn't what I expected. It wasn't what I knew how to look for. But I kept scrolling. And then I stopped trying to see my son. And I started seeing my daughter. I don't know if I deserve a place in your life now. But I wanted you to know I've been thinking about the night you left ever since it happened. I used to think your name was just a tool. A symbol. But now I understand it was a lifeline. I'm sorry for taking it from you. Asterisk whatever you call yourself now. Whoever you are. I hope the world finally knows her. And I hope she's proud. Asterisk. Dad. Skylar didn't cry right away. She sat on the floor with the letter in her lap. The city humming softly outside the window and simply breathed. Her chest rose and fell with a rhythm that had once been unfamiliar. Calm. Not fear. Not panic. She wasn't used to her father writing anything that didn't sound like a directive. This letter wasn't loud. It was quiet. And sometimes, quiet was louder than anything. Later that night, Skylar pulled out her sketchbook. Not the one she used for class assignments, but the private one, the one that still held her childhood drawings taped beside fresh pages. The one that began beneath a loose floorboard and had followed her into every version of herself since. She turned to a new page. This time, she didn't draw a barn or herself. Or a girl floating through clouds. She drew a hand reaching through water, just fingertips breaking the surface, reaching not to drag someone back, but to offer space. A gesture. Not a demand. She titled it, After Silence. The next day, she showed the letter to her professor, who was curating a student-led exhibit on the theme of voice. This letter, she said, handing it over, isn't art, but it's the reason I have mine. Her professor read it quietly, then looked up at her. You're wrong, he said gently. This is art. Just not the kind that gets hung on walls. Can I include it somehow? He nodded. Frame it next to your piece. Let people feel the full echo. So she did. In the exhibit, Skylar hung 3 works. A self-portrait, her current self. Gaze direct, unapologetic, serene. A childhood memory, herself sitting in the barn, sketching by sunlight. The new drawing, After Silence. Beside them, framed in simple black glass, sat her father's letter. People lingered in front of it longer than any image. At the opening night of the exhibit, Skylar stood near the corner of the room, sipping tea from a paper cup. She watched strangers tilt their heads toward her drawings, lean in toward her letter, blink slowly, exhale. One woman pressed a hand to her heart. Another wiped her eyes. And then, to Skylar's surprise, someone familiar appeared at the door. Her mother. Cynthia stood in a navy coat, hair pulled back, eyes flicking around the gallery like she wasn't sure she belonged there. Skylar's heart jolted. Their eyes met. Her mother approached slowly. I wasn't going to come, she said softly. But then Noah sent me the invitation. And I needed to see. Skylar didn't speak. Cynthia looked at the drawings, then the letter. Her mouth trembled. She reached out, almost instinctively, and touched the frame with her fingertips. He wrote that? She asked. Skylar nodded. I didn't think he ever would. Neither did I, Skylar whispered. Her mother turned toward her. You were always Skylar to me, she said. Even when I couldn't say it out loud. I hope you know that. I was scared. Not of you, but of losing what we'd built. Of what the town would say. of what he would say. I know, Skylar replied. But silence was still a choice. I'm sorry. They stood there in the soft light of the gallery. No yelling. No accusations. Just two women with too many years between them, learning how to speak again. Cynthia reached into her coat pocket and handed Skylar something small. It was the charm bracelet. The one with the faded letters. Skylar. I found it in your old box, her mother said. You always kept it. So I thought, maybe I should too. Skylar took it, fingers curling gently around the plastic. Thank you, she said. And this time, she meant it without hesitation. That night, when Skylar returned home, she stood at her mirror and placed the bracelet beside her name necklace on the small tray. She looked at her reflection, so different from the girl who once stood in a barn, hiding drawings and holding back tears. That girl had never disappeared. She had just been waiting for silence to break. And now she had a voice. Chapter 10. Awards and Emptiness. The email subject line read, Congratulations, Skylar and Whitmore, first place, National Emerging Creatives Showcase. Skylar stared at the screen, blinking. Her hands hovered above the keyboard, then fell to her lap. She didn't jump, didn't scream, didn't immediately forward the message to friends or post on social media. It felt too fragile. The showcase had been a long shot. Students from all over the country submitted portfolios, some from schools twice as prestigious as hers, some backed by well-known mentors. Skylar had submitted her collection just hours before the deadline. Her final piece had been After Silence, paired with her father's letter and a written reflection titled The Name They Took. She had poured herself into that application, not for the award, but for the chance to be heard. And now they were listening. She won. The award came with a stipend and a feature in a major online design magazine. Her work would be displayed in a gallery in San Francisco alongside other winners. Her name, Skylar and Whitmore, would be printed in national headlines, on plaques, on posters. People across the country would see her art, her truth, her name. But when the first article went live, with a headline that read, Whitmore's work explores gender, identity, and the power of reclamation, Skylar didn't feel the thrill she expected. Instead, she closed her laptop and sat on the floor. Something inside her ached. She called Noah that night. He picked up on the second ring. Sky? I won, she said flatly. What? The national showcase? Yeah, Skylar. That's incredible. He nearly shouted. Why do you sound like someone just told you your dog died? She paused. Because I feel like I should be happier than I am. Noah was quiet for a moment. Okay, say more. She rubbed her forehead. It's not that I'm ungrateful. I know this is huge. But I thought winning would feel like the final piece. Like vindication. Proof that leaving was worth it. Proof that choosing myself mattered. But all I can think about is that there's no one back home who'll say, we always believed in her. Noah exhaled. You wanted them to see this. I wanted them to feel it. To regret it. To say, we should have protected her. But the truth is, even if they did, it wouldn't change what happened. No, but maybe it changes what happens next. Skylar leaned against the wall, eyes closed. I thought this would fix the emptiness, she whispered. And now you know, Noah said gently, the only thing that fills that emptiness is you. The week of the gallery opening in San Francisco, Skylar traveled with two other student winners. The gallery was modern and glass-walled, full of crisp white space and curated lighting. She wore a soft linen suit, no labels or loud patterns, just herself, clean and intentional. When she arrived, a small crowd had already formed around her display. People were pointing at the drawing of the hand breaking the water's surface. A woman in a green scarf was reading the framed letter beside it, her hand pressed gently to her lips. Skylar stood at a distance. An older man approached her. Are you the artist? Yes, she replied. Your work, he paused. I don't usually cry at these things. But I saw my daughter in this. She's 15. Still figuring things out. But your art, his voice cracked. It made me want to be braver for her. Skylar's throat tightened. Thank you. He left a business card on the table. On the back, he'd written, "Thank you for giving people like my daughter a future to see themselves in." That night, in the hotel room, Skylar stood in front of the mirror again. She unbuttoned her blazer, took off her necklace, and stared at her own reflection. For the first time in months, she whispered, "I'm proud of you," and meant it. When she returned to Portland, the apartment felt different. Not empty or quieter. Grounded. Like the applause and accolades had faded, leaving only the real weight behind. She sat at her desk and opened a fresh sketchbook. No plans. No themes. Just the page. She drew herself at the edge of two fields, one wild and untamed, full of wind and flowers, and the other orderly, fenced in with straight rows of crops. In the middle, a line where her feet touched both. Skylar stood tall in the sketch. Not torn between the two, but standing exactly where she chose. She titled it, "Both Can Be Home." Later that week, her professor called her into his office. "You've had an incredible season," he said, gesturing to the press clippings on his wall. "But I think you're still carrying something." She nodded, not needing to ask how he knew. "Success doesn't fix silence," he said softly. "It just turns it into a stage." "I wanted to prove them wrong," Skylar said. "But I think I also wanted them to clap." He smiled gently. "Most of us do. But healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just being able to walk into your own room and say your name without flinching." Skylar blinked, then whispered, "Skylar." He nodded. "That's art, too." That evening, Skylar called her mother. "You probably already saw the article," she began, nervous. "I did," Cynthia replied. "Your aunt printed it out and stuck it on the fridge. Your father read it twice." "He did." "He cried," Skylar. "Quietly in the garage. But I saw." Skylar swallowed. "That's unexpected. You don't have to come home. But if you ever do, just know we've started making space for the real you." Skylar smiled faintly. "I've been doing the same." That night, she lit a candle. Not for anyone else. Just for herself. For every version of her that once whispered in the dark, "Please let me exist." Now she did. Fully. Fiercely. Her name was Skylar. And she was no longer a secret. Chapter 11. Noah's Visit. It was a rainy Saturday in November when Skylar heard the knock. 3 short raps, a pause, then 2 more, Noah's signature rhythm since they were kids. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and hurried to the door, heart already lifting. When she opened it, there he was soaked from the storm, hair clinging to his forehead. A duffel bag over one shoulder and a coffee carrier in the other hand. "Delivery for someone famous," he grinned. Skylar pulled him inside and into a hug before he could finish the joke. "I didn't know you were coming." He shrugged. "Didn't want to give you time to say no." She rolled her eyes, but laughed. "You're lucky. I've been meaning to clean, but deadlines got in the way." "Yeah, I can see you're drowning in art school chaos." He gestured at the scattered paintbrushes, 2 empty mugs, and a blanket cocoon on the couch. "Shut up. I've been productive." "I know. I saw your new piece online," he said, walking inside. "The one with the fields and the fence. That one hit me harder than I expected." She offered him a dry towel. "It surprised me too." Noah looked around the apartment as he dried his hair. "You've made this place really yours." Skylar nodded, glancing at the sketches taped to the wall, the small shelf of thrifted books. The ceramic dish with her name necklace resting inside. "Yeah," she said. "It finally feels like it belongs to me." They sat at the small kitchen table, sipping coffee and catching up. Noah told stories from home, how the cows had broken out of the pasture again, how their dad had started wearing reading glasses and pretending they were just for maps, how the neighbors still talked like the Whitmores were royalty. "You're a bit of a legend in Ellensburg now," Noah said with a half smile. "They say things like, 'Did you hear what Samuel Jr. did?' Then someone corrects them, 'It's Skylar now.' Some folks nod. Some folks pretend they didn't hear." Skylar looked down at her cup. "I'm still not sure if I want to go back." "You don't have to," Noah said, serious now. "But if you ever do, I want you to be ready for how weird it'll be." "Weird how?" He leaned forward. Because people will still see the barn and the boots and the name they remember. But you're not just that anymore. And it might hurt. Even if it's better now. Even if they're trying, it might still hurt. Skylar nodded slowly. That's what scares me. Not the rejection. The effort. The almosts. The almosts? Like, when someone tries to accept you but still flinches at the name. Or when they say, I support you, but it sounds like a confession, not a celebration. Noah was quiet for a beat. It won't be perfect. But it might be honest. And that's something. Later, they walked to a bookstore downtown, Skylar's favorite, with creaky floors and the smell of old paper and rain. In the art section, Noah pulled out a heavy book titled Modern American Visionaries and flipped through it casually. He paused suddenly, held it up, and turned the book around. There, on page 247, was Skylar's portrait and a short paragraph beneath her name. Her name. She blinked, stunned. That wasn't supposed to come out until next year. Guess they couldn't wait, Noah grinned. She ran her fingers lightly over the page, afraid it might vanish. This is weird, she whispered. Seeing myself like this. Not hiding. It's not weird. It's overdue. They stood in the aisle for a while, shoulder to shoulder, the page open between them. Finally, Noah said, I bought you something. You didn't have to. He pulled a small box from his coat pocket. Inside was a silver bracelet, simple and smooth. Skylar lifted it. On the inside, etched so faintly it could be missed unless you looked close, were the words, she always was. She stared at it, lips parting slightly. Noah. I figured, he said, when people ask who you are, you won't need to explain. You can just show them that. Her throat tightened. Thank you. He shrugged, trying to play it cool. You gave me a sister. This is the least I can do. She laughed, wiping the corner of her eye. You always knew, didn't you? I knew you were never him, Noah said. Even when you tried really hard to be. But this Skylar? She fits. That night, back at the apartment, they watched an old movie on her tiny couch, feet tangled under a shared blanket. Eating takeout and arguing over plot holes. Noah fell asleep first, snoring lightly, head tilted back. Skylar sat there, watching the city blink through the window. Her hand rested on the bracelet. She always was. For the first time in her life, the phrase didn't feel like a fight. It felt like a fact. The silence she'd once feared had become something else. Not empty. Not accusing. But full of possibility. And for once, Skylar didn't need to fill it. She just breathed. And let it be. Chapter 12. The Birthday Phone Call. Skylar hadn't celebrated her birthday in years, not really. She had marked it quietly, maybe with a coffee and a fresh sketchbook. Or a long walk through the city with her headphones in and the world tuned out. There were too many memories tangled up in the day. Too many birthdays where the cake had her wrong name piped in blue frosting, where the candles sat on a table surrounded by silence and stiff smiles. So when her birthday arrived this year, she treated it like any other Tuesday. She got up, made tea, opened her laptop, answered emails, until her phone rang. The screen lit up with a number she hadn't saved but knew instantly. Home. Her finger hovered above the green circle. She stared for 5 rings, then 6. Just as she was about to let it go to voicemail, she tapped accept and raised the phone to her ear. Hello? There was static on the other end. Then a breath. Then, Skylar. She froze. Her name, spoken in her father's voice. Not Sam, not Junior. Not a grunt or silence or an awkward dance around gendered terms. Skylar. She didn't respond right away. I know I shouldn't be calling, he continued, voice rough, worn. But your mom told me it's your birthday. And I figured if I'm going to call you anything, it should be your name. Her throat tightened. He cleared his throat. Happy birthday. The words landed like a quiet offering. Skylar leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to find her breath. Thank you, she said softly. More silence. Then he said, I still don't understand everything. I probably never will. But I've been trying. Your mom's been helping. Noah too. She smiled faintly. Noah helps everyone. Yeah, he does. Another pause. Your work, he added. It's powerful. I saw the one with the hand. And the girl between the two fields. Your mom said that was about home. Skylar swallowed. It was about standing between where I came from and where I am. Well, he said slowly, I hope where you are now, it's better than what we gave you. Skylar looked around her apartment, at the art on the walls, the soft light pouring in from the window, the bracelet on her wrist. It is, she said gently. But I also wouldn't be here without where I came from. Her father sighed. I'm not proud of what we did, of how we handled, all of it. But I want you to know if you ever come home again, we'll call you by the name that belongs to you, not the one we chose for ourselves. Skylar closed her eyes. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was real. And sometimes, real was enough. Later that evening, Skylar treated herself to dinner at her favorite little cafe. She brought her sketchbook, ordered a slice of lemon cake, and doodled between bites. On the page, she drew a child sitting in front of a birthday cake. No name on it, just a candle flickering softly. Behind the child were two shadows, parents, out of focus, but with their hands open instead of closed. She titled it, At Last, They Said My Name. Back at home, she found a small package outside her door. It was wrapped in brown paper, no label. But the handwriting on the tag was Noah's. Inside was a necklace, simple, silver, with a charm shaped like an open sketchbook. Tucked beside it was a note. You started as someone else's story. Now you're writing your own. Happy birthday, Sky. Love, Noah. She held the necklace in her palm, heartwarm. Then she walked to the mirror and put it on. Before bed, Skylar made one more sketch. This time, she drew herself, not as a child, not as a symbol, but as she was now. Standing on a hill, the wind in her hair, the sun behind her. One hand open, one hand holding a pen. No fences. No names taken. Only the truth she chose. Across the top of the page, she wrote, I was always here. You just had to look. Chapter 13. The Road to Ellensburg. The road to Ellensburg stretched long and familiar, framed by wheat fields that rippled like waves in the wind. Skylar watched them pass through the window of the Greyhound bus, earbuds in, sketchbook closed in her lap. This wasn't a spontaneous trip, but it wasn't something she had completely planned either. After the birthday call, she'd thought about it every day. Then came the envelope from her mom, an invitation to a local art fundraiser being held in town, with a handwritten note. They're honoring you. Quietly, but still. Maybe it's time to come back, even just for a moment. Skylar didn't know if she was ready. But maybe healing didn't wait for perfect timing. Maybe it just needed one brave step in the right direction. The bus pulled into the tiny station at the edge of town just after noon. Skylar stepped off wearing jeans, a long tan coat, and a knit scarf she'd made herself. Her sketchbook stayed zipped inside her backpack. Her name necklace hung around her neck, catching the pale light. Noah was already there, leaning against his rust-colored truck, sipping gas station coffee like it was gourmet. You showed up, he said, pushing off the hood with a grin. Skylar smiled. I figured I'd come see if the cows still smell the same. They do, but you don't. She laughed, and for a moment, the tension in her shoulders eased. Ellensburg hadn't changed much. Same faded storefronts, same diner on the corner, same hand-painted signs nailed to telephone poles advertising quilting clubs and lost dogs. But the difference wasn't the town, it was Skylar. She wasn't shrinking into herself anymore. She wasn't glancing behind her, afraid of being called by the wrong name. People still stared, but not all of them looked away when she met their eyes. Some nodded. Some smiled. Some just blinked and kept going. And somehow, that was enough. The house looked smaller than she remembered. The paint had faded from crisp white to soft gray, and the porch swing now leaned to one side. But the fields stretched out just as they always had, rolling gently into the horizon. Her parents stood on the porch. Her mother's hands were clasped in front of her. Her father wore his work boots, even though the dirt was dry and the day didn't demand them. Skylar paused at the bottom of the steps, heart thudding. Then her mother descended first, arms open, unsure. "Skylar," she said. No hesitation. Skylar stepped into her arms. Her mother held her like something precious and breakable, whispering, "Thank you for coming home." When they pulled apart, her father was still on the porch. Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither moved. Then he gave a small nod and said, "Welcome back." Inside, the house smelled the same: wood polish, old coffee, a hint of hay. But Skylar noticed something new: framed photos lining the hallway. One of her as a child in a yellow sundress. Another, recent, clipped from a local newspaper. Local artist honored for national work. Skylar Whitmore returns. She turned to her mother, surprised. "We've been making space," Cynthia said quietly. "For you." Her old bedroom was exactly how she left it, almost. The posters were gone. The bed had a new quilt. But what stopped her cold was the wall. Pinned across it were dozens of her drawings, photocopies. Prints, clippings sent by Noah, downloaded from online features, scanned from her portfolio. All of them titled Skylar Whitmore. She reached out, touched the edge of one with trembling fingers. "You kept them." Her father's voice came from the doorway. "We didn't know how else to say we were sorry." She turned to look at him. For once, he didn't fill the space with orders or opinions. Just stood there, quiet, uncertain. "I don't expect you to forgive all of it," he said. "But from now on, we'll call you by the name you gave yourself. Not the one we forced on you." Her throat tightened. "It was always my name. You just didn't want to see it." He nodded. "I see it now." That night, after dinner, Skylar sat alone in the backyard under the stars. The same sky. But everything felt different. The name that once felt like a battle now sat gently on her shoulders, carried, not resisted. The people who had erased her were trying, even stumbling, to rewrite the story with her. And for the first time, the home she had run from no longer felt like a graveyard of what she wasn't. It was becoming a place where she could be who she was. A voice behind her said, "Can I sit?" Her father. She nodded, scooting over. They sat in silence for a while, the wind rustling through dry cornstalks. "I still don't know how to fix what we did," he murmured. "You don't have to," Skylar said softly. "You just have to mean it when you say my name." He looked at her, eyes glassy. "Skylar," he said. And in that moment, the wind didn't bite. The air didn't ache. It was just the beginning of something new. Chapter 14. A Stranger at the Farm. The morning light spilled weakly through the curtains of the Whitmore farmhouse. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke and damp earth, the comforting but unfamiliar scent of a place Skylar once called home, but had not truly inhabited in years. Skylar stood at the edge of the front porch, her fingers curling around the strap of her backpack. The field stretched before her, golden and restless in the breeze. But something about them felt distant, as if they belonged to someone else. A voice from behind broke her reverie. "Looks like we've got a visitor." Her father's voice was gruff, but lacked its usual sharpness. Skylar turned to see him approaching, eyes narrowed yet curious. Behind him, her mother peeked out from the doorway, hesitant. I thought I'd stop by," she said, voice soft. Her father folded his arms. "You're a stranger here now, Skylar." She blinked at the word stranger. That's what she felt too. "Maybe," she admitted. "But this was my home once. And I'm here now." He grunted, then nodded toward the barn. "The place hasn't changed much, though it's been too long since it's seen someone care for it." Skylar looked past him, toward the old barn that had held so many memories, some harsh, some hopeful. She took a deep breath and started walking. The barn door creaked as she pushed it open. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light slicing through the gaps in the wooden planks. The air was thick with the scent of hay and old wood, the familiar smell triggering a rush of bittersweet memories. Skylar moved inside slowly, touching the weathered beams with reverence. This place had been a refuge and a prison. Near the back corner, she saw a cluster of drawings taped to the wall, her childhood sketches, faded but unmistakable. Butterflies, girls with flowing hair, and soft, painted skies. Tears welled up, but she blinked them back. A sudden noise startled her, footsteps crunching on the straw. "Noah," she whispered. He stepped forward, smiling gently. I kept your corner safe. For you. Skylar smiled, warmth flooding her chest. It's good to see you here. Her mother joined them, carrying a basket of fresh-baked bread. We wanted to start fresh, she said, voice trembling. Not erase the past, but make room for the future. Her father approached, hands tucked into his pockets. We've all changed, he said. Maybe it's time this farm did too. Skylar nodded, heart pounding. I don't want to be a stranger anymore, she said. I want to be me, Skylar. The daughter you named once, not the son you needed. Her parents exchanged looks, a mixture of regret and hope. We're ready, her mother said quietly. Days turned into weeks. Skylar stayed on the farm, slowly reconnecting with the land she once knew. She worked alongside her father, fixing fences, tending to animals, not as Samuel Jr., but as herself. Her sketches returned, now inspired by the fields and skies of her childhood, infused with the freedom of the city's light. Neighbors greeted her with hesitant smiles, some still whispering, but many opening their arms. Skylar felt herself weaving back into the fabric of a place that had once tried to unravel her. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in fiery hues, Skylar stood on the porch. Her parents beside her, Noah leaning on the railing. Her father broke the silence. From now on, he said, you are not the shadow of the name we gave you. You are the light we'll follow. Skylar smiled, the words settling deep in her bones. She looked up at the endless sky above the farm, vast, open, hers, and whispered, I am Skylar. Chapter 15. The Dinner Table. The dining room was warmer than Skylar remembered. Soft light spilled from the chandelier above, casting gentle shadows across the wooden table that had borne generations of meals, conversations, and silences. The windows framed a quiet dusk, the first stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. Skylar sat down between her mother and Noah, her father opposite, the space once heavy with unspoken words now holding a tentative hope. Cynthia placed a carved wooden bowl of stew at the center. The aroma was familiar, hearty, comforting, the taste of home. Dinner's ready, her mother said softly. Skylar reached for a plate, her hands steady despite the flutter of nerves. For a few moments, they ate in silence. The clinking of silverware punctuated the quiet, the familiar rhythm oddly soothing. Then her father cleared his throat. I wanted to say something, he began, voice rough but sincere. For years, I treated you like a son. I told you how you should act, what you should be. I thought I was protecting the family name. Skylar met his eyes. You were protecting your idea of the name, not me. He nodded slowly. I see that now. And I'm sorry. Her mother reached across the table, taking Skylar's hand gently. We both are. We were scared. Scared of losing what we had, scared of change. Skylar squeezed her mother's hand. I understand now, she said, but I needed to live my own truth. Not as a shadow, but as myself. Noah smiled warmly. You've always been that person. The conversation flowed more easily after that. Stories from home, memories of childhood, plans for the future. Her father asked about her art school. Her mother shared news of neighbors. Noah teased her about her city habits, how she'd never fully adapted to farm life, but that was okay. Skylar laughed. For the first time in a long time, the table felt like a place of belonging. After dinner, Skylar stood by the window, looking out at the farm bathed in moonlight. She traced her fingers over the bracelet Noah had given her, the charm catching the silver light. Her parents joined her silently. Her father spoke again, quieter this time. From now on, you're the daughter we wished we'd known how to raise. Not the son we imagined. Her mother nodded. You're not the name we gave you. You're the one you chose. Skylar smiled, tears shimmering. Thank you, she whispered. The three stood together, a family reknit, fragile, imperfect, but real. That night, Skylar lay in her old bed, the quilt soft beneath her. She opened her sketchbook and drew a final image. A dinner table, round and full, surrounded by open hands. In the center, a single candle burned bright. Beneath it, she wrote, From shadows to light, we are who we choose to be. She closed the book, heartful. She was home. She was Skylar. Chapter 16. Building Bridges. The morning sun poured over the Whitmore farm like a promise. Skylar stood at the edge of the field, sketchbook in hand, watching her parents and Noah work the land with renewed energy. The air smelled of fresh earth and possibilities, a sharp contrast to the heavy silence that had once hung over this place. She felt a new kind of connection, not just to the soil beneath her feet, but to the family she had thought she'd lost. Skylar had brought something new home with her, ideas. Ideas born in the city's bustling art studios, ideas about community, creativity, and healing. She proposed hosting art workshops at the farm, inviting local kids to explore drawing, painting, and storytelling. A place where creativity could bloom alongside the wheat and corn. Her parents exchanged glances, hesitant but intrigued. Could be good for the town, her father said slowly. Might even bring some life back to the place. Her mother smiled. And maybe it's good for us too. The first workshop was small, just a handful of children and a few curious adults, but the laughter that filled the barn that day was unlike anything Skylar had heard in years. She watched as a shy girl, no older than 8, timidly held a paintbrush and then, encouraged by the group, blossomed into a storyteller through color. Skylar knelt beside her, offering gentle guidance. "This is your world," she said. "You get to decide what it looks like." The girl looked up, eyes bright. Word spread quickly. Soon, more children came with their families, eager to experience art in a place they thought only knew hard work and hardship. Skylar found herself bridging two worlds, her rural past and urban present, building a community where stories and soil mingled freely. Her parents, once skeptical, began to see the farm not just as a legacy to protect, but as a canvas to nurture. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Skylar's father stood beside her, watching a group of kids paint wildflowers on barn walls. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "I never thought I'd say this," he admitted, "but I'm proud of the path you're carving here." Skylar smiled. "Thank you for letting me." He nodded, eyes glistening. "From now on, we're growing something together. Not just crops, but hope." That evening, Skylar sat on the porch swing with her mother and Noah. They talked about dreams and fears, the past and the future. Skylar's heart swelled with gratitude, not just for what she had reclaimed, but for what they were building anew. Above them, the sky stretched wide and endless. She whispered, "This is home." Chapter 17. A new name on the barn. The barn stood weathered but proud, its wooden beams etched with years of sun and storm. For decades, it had been the heart of the Whitmore farm, silent witness to seasons of sowing and harvest, growth and decay. But now, it was ready for a new chapter. Skylar stood before the massive sliding door, brush in hand, the soft hum of cicadas filling the air. Her parents and Noah watched from a distance, faces alight with cautious hope. "I think it's time," Skylar said quietly. Her father nodded. "Time to mark the place with who we really are." Together, they prepared the surface, sanding away peeling paint and grime. The wood felt rough beneath Skylar's fingers, a tangible connection to her past and present. Her mother mixed the paint, steady hands betraying a quiet excitement. Skylar dipped the brush into a deep, earthy green, a color she chose to reflect the land and life she loved. She began to paint. Slow, deliberate strokes formed letters across the barn door. Skylar Whitmore Creative Farm. A statement. A reclamation. A bridge between what was and what could be. Neighbors began to gather as the work progressed, drawn by the vibrant color and bold lettering. "Is that her name?" one woman whispered to another. "Yes," the other replied. "Finally, it's hers." The small crowd grew, some hesitant, some smiling with recognition. The barn had never looked so alive. As the sun set, the new sign stood bold against the twilight sky. Skylar stepped back, heart swelling. This wasn't just paint on wood. It was a declaration, a celebration, a home reclaimed. Later that night, as fireflies danced near the porch, Skylar and her family sat beneath the stars. Her father raised his glass. To Skylar, the name we're proud to call family. They clinked glasses softly, the sound carrying into the quiet night. Skylar smiled, feeling the weight of years lift. The barn was hers now, and so was the sky above it. Chapter 18: The Art Festival. The morning of the Ellensburg Art Festival arrived with a gentle mist settling over the town, softening edges and painting the streets with the scent of damp earth and fresh beginnings. Skylar stood near her booth, a vibrant display of paintings, sketches, and photographs that captured the rural landscape through the eyes of someone who had lived both inside and outside its borders. Neighbors, friends, and strangers wandered by, stopping to admire her work, to ask questions, to smile. This festival was more than an event. It was a reunion, a gathering of stories, healing, and hope. Children from the workshops she'd hosted helped set up a small mural wall nearby, where they painted wildflowers and animals under Skylar's gentle guidance. She watched a little boy carefully color a bluebird with wide eyes. "You're really good," she said, kneeling beside him. He beamed. "I want to be an artist like you." Skylar smiled, heartful. "Then you already are." Throughout the day, Skylar found herself approached by people who remembered her name, some from long ago, some from news articles, some from whispers in the community. An older farmer shook her hand firmly. "You're doing good work, Skylar. Proud to see you come home." Her mother watched from the sidelines, tears glistening as she whispered to her father. "She's shining." As the sun began to dip, the festival moved to the town square for the evening showcase. Skylar's paintings were projected onto a large screen, a sweeping panorama of fields, skies, and the people who shaped them. The crowd hushed, drawn into the stories behind each brushstroke. When the last image faded, a soft applause began, tentative at first, then swelling into a roar of appreciation. Skylar felt tears prick her eyes. This was the moment she had waited for. To be seen, to be accepted, to be home. Later, as stars blanketed the sky, Skylar stood beside the mural wall, now alive with color and laughter. Her family gathered around her. Her father spoke quietly. "You brought the sky back to us." Skylar looked up. The vast, open sky stretched overhead, endless, inviting. And for the first time, she felt she belonged beneath it. Chapter 19: The Art Festival. The town square buzzed with life as the Ellensburg Art Festival entered its second day. Stalls lined the streets, awash in a spectrum of colors from handmade crafts, paintings, sculptures, and photography. The aroma of freshly baked pies and roasted coffee beans floated through the crisp autumn air, blending with the soft murmur of voices and laughter. Skylar's booth was nestled near the center, a vibrant oasis adorned with canvases depicting the rolling fields, star-studded skies, and intimate portraits of the community. Her work told a story, one of roots and wings, of loss and reclamation. Visitors lingered, mesmerized by the sincerity etched in every brushstroke. An elderly woman, clutching a weathered sun hat, wiped a tear as she pointed to a painting of a young girl standing between two fields, one wild and untamed, the other fenced and orderly. "That's her, isn't it?" she whispered to her companion. Skylar overheard and nodded gently yes. "That painting is about finding balance between who we were and who we become." The woman smiled, squeezing Skylar's hand. "Thank you for sharing that." Nearby, children from the workshops painted a collaborative mural on a blank wall. Laughter bubbled as paintbrushes dipped in reds, blues, and greens brought the scene to life, wildflowers, animals, and bright stars. Skylar knelt beside a small boy, guiding his brush gently across the wall. "See? This is your story. You choose the colors." The boy grinned, his eyes wide with pride. As twilight descended, the festival shifted to the open-air stage in the town square. Skylar's paintings were projected against a large white screen, accompanied by a narration of her journey from the farm to the city and back. The crowd fell silent, captivated by the unfolding tale, a story of a girl who lived under a borrowed name and reclaimed her true self. Applause erupted as the final image faded, a ripple of warmth washing over Skylar. Later, beneath the glowing string lights, Skylar joined her family and friends. Her father's voice was steady, touched with emotion. "You've brought more than art back to this town. You've brought us hope." Her mother nodded, eyes shimmering. "We're proud of you. The real you." Noah clapped her on the back, grinning. "Guess you really did come home." Skylar smiled, heart full. The journey had been long, but beneath the vast sky, surrounded by love and acceptance, she was finally whole. Chapter 20. The sky is hers now. The last light of the festival faded into a blanket of stars, each one a tiny promise etched across the sky. Skylar stood alone on the porch of the Whitmore farmhouse, the crisp night air wrapping around her like a soft shawl. The fields stretched out before her, dark and vast, their familiar scent mingling with the cool breeze. For years, this sky had been a witness to her silence, her struggles, and her hidden dreams. Now, it felt like a canvas, wide open and waiting. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver charm bracelet Noah had given her years ago. The letters spelling Skylar gleamed softly in the moonlight. She clasped it around her wrist, feeling its weight, a quiet reminder of how far she had come. From a name that was taken, to a name she claimed, to a name that belonged only to her. Her parents stepped out behind her, standing side by side, quiet but present. Her father's voice was low but steady. "We were wrong to try and make you someone else, but we're proud of who you are." Her mother smiled, eyes glistening. "From now on, you are the daughter we always wanted, the light that guides us home." Skylar turned, feeling the warmth of their words wash over her. Noah appeared at the foot of the porch steps, grinning as always. "Ready to look at the sky with me?" he asked. She nodded. Together, they walked down to the edge of the field, the tall grass brushing their legs as the stars glittered above. Skylar looked up, her heart swelling. The sky was hers now, unbounded, untamed, infinite. As they lay back on the cool earth, the silence between them was full not of loss, but of peace. Skylar whispered into the night, "I am Skylar. I am here. I am whole." Noah squeezed her hand. And under that vast, forgiving sky, the past and future merged. Her story was no longer a shadow. It was light.